Today's story was only revealed recently. As you may already know, much of what happened in Chernobyl remained hidden for a long time. In fact, the Soviets tried to conceal even the accident itself. It only came to light because radiation detectors in Sweden noticed something unusual, and from that questions were raised until it was concluded where an accident might have occurred. Well, over time, many things were revealed, but there was an enigma. What was that orange Mercedes-Benz truck exactly doing in the reactor room? How did it end up there? And what happened to the driver and the other people operating it? Ladies and gentlemen, now enjoy one of the most incredible stories about engines. Hello my friends, welcome once again to the channel for another story. And today the story is amazing. And that's why I already want to count on your like, your subscription to the channel, and at the end of the video a comment to help engage with me here. I don't like to stall, but first I want to leave a little message. Now you can become a member of the channel. That's right, man. Besides enjoying the channel's content and having exclusive advantages, you also help the channel grow. Invest in better equipment and more refined editing. It's a kind of symbolic amount, I think starting from $7 if I'm not mistaken, but it helps the channel a lot. So if you really like automotive history and want to contribute to the channel, become a member by clicking below. Thank you very much indeed. And truly, let's get to this amazing video. The Chernobyl plant began construction in the year 1970 after a suitable location was chosen on the banks of the Pripyat River in the Kiev region. Because nuclear plants need a lot of water for various functions, including cooling the reactors. Along with the plant, a city was created, also called Pripyat, which served both as a residence for workers during construction and later for the employees. Pripyat was located about 3 kilometers from the plant, more or less. To help you locate it, the plant was 11 kilometers from the border between Ukraine and Belarus, and 110 kilometers from the capital, Kiev. 7 years later, the power units began to be put into operation in 1977 and 1978. The first two and the third and fourth power generating units in 1981 and 1983, respectively. On April 26, 1986, around 1:23 in the morning during an unsuccessful test, two explosions occurred at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. They reached level 7 on the International Nuclear Event Scale. This is the highest level on the scale. The problem occurred in reactor 4 of the plant. But after all, what was the orange Mercedes truck doing there exactly at that time? In 2021, the KGB released a document called the Chernobyl Dossier, where they demonstrated the various problems the plant had. There, the KGB showed that since the beginning of its construction, the plant already had serious problems, ranging from the diversion of construction materials by plant employees, to pipes arriving out of specifications, poor quality concrete and steel, and bad equipment. The famous accident that happened in Chernobyl was not the first. It was the last, because it was no longer possible to continue with the plant after that. But before it, there had already been several accidents that we never knew about, either because they had less offensive potential or simply because the government covered them up. The plant had 4 reactors, as I already mentioned. They were of the RBMK 1000 model, with each reactor having 2 turbines, therefore 8 turbines in total for 4 reactors. These reactors were considered extremely reliable to the point of having been awarded internally for their quality. But they were not exactly the same, and that's why this truck ended up there. Reactors 1 and 2 used turbines that were very good, of exceptional quality. But because of that, they were very expensive. So the company that made these turbines decided to cut costs in turbine production by using lower quality materials, metals of poorer quality.
They saved on the metal of a nuclear reactor turbine.
All wrong. And these turbines ended up in reactors 3 and 4, meaning reactors 3 and 4 had defective turbines right from the start. In the first years of operation, it was noticed that these lower quality turbines had a chronic defect that persisted being more sensitive to operating conditions, and as a consequence, a higher level of vibration in the bearing supports. This vibration needed to be constantly corrected, but after a while, it would always reappear. In other words, it's like doing balancing and alignment on your car. After a certain time, you'll have to do it again because it will become unbalanced. The same thing happened there. The turbine became unbalanced, and someone had to go there to balance it from time to time. The Chernobyl plant was not the only one using this type of reactor, so the Soviets assembled a team of turbine operators who went from plant to plant making these repairs. For this, they bought a kind of mobile vibration laboratory from the Swiss company Vibrometer, which was mounted on a Mercedes-Benz chassis. This mobile laboratory was very expensive and was well taken care of by its operators. Not only because of the cost, but because it was something completely innovative. It was Western technology, something rare to see in the Soviet Union. This truck was based in the city of Kharkiv, and from there, it traveled to plants all over the Soviet Union providing assistance. On April 17, 1986, a chief engineer from Chernobyl contacted the technicians, informing them that a test and a shutdown of Reactor 4 would take place between the 25th and 26th. It was necessary to take advantage of the moment to recalibrate the reactor's turbine. The group then set out for what would be their last mission. The team included engineers Kabanov, Popov, and Savenkov, along with a truck driver. Upon arriving at the plant, a door was opened and the truck entered the turbine hall. It stopped near turbine 8 of reactor 4 and the tests began. At 1:23 in the morning, the explosion occurred. The shock wave from the explosion affected the turbine hall. It broke the roof and scattered a lot of debris. It also burst the oil line of a turbine. This caused a mixture of oil with hot water and pieces of graphite from the reactor to gush out. In addition to nuclear fuel, the place became chaotic. Flames, ashes, and jets of radioactive graphite dust immediately filled the environment. At the time of the accident, neither the engineers nor the employees of the plant realized the magnitude of the danger they were exposed to. I think because it was a moment of panic until you really understand what is happening. So the engineers helped the employees put out the fire, even without realizing they were receiving massive doses of radiation. Amidst all that, Savenkov was the first to feel unwell and was taken outside by the 2 other engineers. Later it was discovered that this didn't help much, since the area where people were waiting for help outside was also exposed to extremely high doses of radiation. In the end, no one had the slightest idea of the scale and severity of the accident. Many didn't even know how harmful radiation was. The 3 engineers were among the people most exposed to radiation at the time of the accident. They stayed 1 day in the Pripyat hospital and then were flown to the 6th Clinical Hospital, which would become famous worldwide. There, the dreaded diagnosis came. Savenkov and Popov had first-degree acute radiation sickness, therefore more severe. Kabanov, however, had 3rd degree, thus milder. The Russian doctors, led by Konstantinovna Gusov, tried everything possible, including a bone marrow transplant, but there wasn't much that could be done. The radiation doses they were exposed to were too high. Vladimir Ivanovich Savenkov died on May 21st, almost a month later, and was buried in a heavy lead coffin. Before he died, he gave an interview explaining more or less what happened. I can't show it here without blurring because YouTube would take down the video due to his appearance. What can be gathered is they had no idea of the severity of what was happening. He even mentions that it started raining black-colored ash. His face was covered with it. But at the time, I think they didn't even realize that it could be so radioactive. George Ilarionovich Popovy died on July 13th and was buried along with other Chernobyl victims in the cemetery in Moscow. Alexander Kabanov survived after extensive treatment and returned back to his hometown of Kharkiv. As for the driver Strukov, he did not receive treatment, and later on, after some time, he developed some disabilities. For a long time, the death of these two engineers was hidden from everyone because the Soviets insisted that only 28 people had died in the accident. And since the reports stated that they died of acute radiation sickness, they thought it best to keep it confidential. But what about the truck? Well, after some time, it was dragged out because they needed to organize things inside to build that large sarcophagus that we know today to contain the radiation. For a long time, there was consideration to refurbish it, even to give it, this mobile laboratory in the case of the truck, the names of the engineers who had passed away. But after some time, the news came that it would be impossible to recover that truck, and it would have to be placed in the vehicle depots of Chernobyl, which at some point I want to make a video about. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss this video about the immense vehicle depots that ended up appearing there in Chernobyl. In fact, there were so many vehicles used in the liquidation of the problems there that there was a shortage of Soviet vehicles, trucks, buses, etc. due to the number of used vehicles, and then had to be abandoned because they couldn't be cleaned. Although some people have, through photos, searched for traces of it among the abandoned vehicles in Chernobyl, nothing was ever found, which raises a hypothesis. It is possible that the KGB towed this vehicle somewhere to remove equipment from it. It is worth noting that the mobile laboratory had just over 6 months of use, and gear with cutting-edge Western technology that could not simply and easily be abandoned. They could be used for reverse engineering and to create similar equipment in the Soviet Union itself. What actually happened, we will never know. But this truck witnessed one of the greatest tragedies in history, which was not just the explosion of the plant itself, but the concealment of victims by the Soviet government, itself being a victim that was literally never seen again. Interesting story, right? I really enjoy studying history through engines to see how engines helped and influenced history. If you also like this type of content and are passionate, you already know. Subscribe, like, share with a friend who also likes it, and you want to become a member of the channel. I will be very happy with that too. If you can't, that's okay. The content will be available in the same way for everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. Always count on us here on the channel. Leave video suggestions in the comments. Thank you very much and see you next time.